Hey everybody, Spaz here. This is going to be kind of a different video for me. I'm going to be talking about a certain decade. I'm going to be showing you album covers as I talk so you don't get that bored by what I say, but I'm not going to be talking about the albums that I show you. They are just specific albums that I really love from this decade that I'm going to talk about. The reasons I'm talking about it I will reveal at the end of this little episode. So we are going to talk about the 80s. Now, the 80s, when I think about 80s music, of course the 80s was 1980 to 1989, but when I think of the music scene, I'm more or less thinking more in the field of, I move a little bit, 77 to about 80, 85 for sure. Sometimes I'll give a little leniency to stuff from 86, but like from 87 to 89, that was just a bridge to the 90s, and music was really changing then. Anyway, music of the 80s is really, back then, I graduated high school from 1982, and late 70s, early 80s was really about, I guess I would say, like a time, learning about life and understanding the world around us, building friendships, strengthening friendships, and just really connecting with life as I entered adulthood. I was born in 1963, so by the time I graduated in 1982, I was almost 19 years old. And it was also about discovering new music. Back then, music was inspiring and empowering for me, and yet all of it was very different. Everything that I'm showing you now is very different from what came before and what I show afterwards. But back when I was going into high school, I would go shopping with my friends, Matthew and Jeanette and Jeff and Chuck, and other friends that I spent a lot of time either talking or listening to music would be a different Jeff. Also Fred and Cindy and Debbie and Dana and Bill. And, I appreciate them all because they really put up with my nonsense, because I was really passionate about music. I believe far more than any of them. At least they'd go home to normal lives, and I'd go home to my stereo, play my records. But yes, I do appreciate them all for being patient with me, and I have such great memories from this time in my life. But I didn't have many girlfriends during most of my high school years, and even the few years afterwards. But that's not from my lack of trying. My average was not very good in the girl department. For every 10 girls I had a crush on, there was none that felt the same way about me. So I found my consolation and my comfort in music. I was disappointed by a lot of the things at that time, but music never let me down. It never has, and it never will. Well, apart from shitty music, but I don't really concentrate on talking or thinking about stuff that I don't like. I just focus on the stuff that I do like. But I'd share music with friends. I'd make mixtapes, talk about music. Even in high school, I wrote for the high school newspaper, the Argolog, and I did concert and album reviews. Now, after high school, I'd still go record shopping with the same old friends. We'd go to Music Market, Licorice Pizza, Beggar's Banquet, Tower, Music Plus, The Warehouse, all the great stores in Orange County. In fact, with all of us having jobs, record shopping really amped up quite a bit in like 83 and 84 because we had money, and we would spend it on just glorious LPs and 7-inch singles and 12-inch singles and imports, domestic picture discs, colored vinyl. And more importantly, back in the 80s, we were vaguely intelligent, and we called it vinyl. And I want you to remember that, hipster millennials. It is called vinyl, not vinyls. We came home with bags or boxes full of vinyl. Back then, you can go to like Aaron's or Renee's in LA, and you could buy bunch of stuff for 25 cents, 29 cents. That's how I discovered a lot of bands. You know, I'd take my paycheck and we'd head up to LA, you know, once a week, once every other week. And I'd go through the 25 cent, 29 cent bins and I'd discover stuff. I'd go, oh, this is on this label, or oh, this was produced by somebody, or oh, these guys look cool. And I would take chances. Sometimes I'd walk out with a box filled with like 30 LPs. And, you know, you think about it, that's not a lot of money. And I had really good average. I had terrible average on women, but I had a great average on picking albums. I'd say probably 90% of everything that I just bought blindly because it looked cool or it was produced by somebody, 90% success rate. The other 10%, hey, whatever. You know, I mean, it wasn't that much money. I mean, if you're paying $20 for an album or a CD, then, you know, of course, you know, that's a big disappointment. But if you're paying 25 cents for an album and out of a box of them, 4 of them are bad, big whoop. Anyway, once 1986 rolled around, you know, things were changing. Friendships started splintering. Friends started getting into serious relationship. And at that point, still wasn't happening for me. Strike out. I wasn't into baseball, but I struck out quite a bit. So I was still buying albums. And, you know, right now I realize that maybe my music geekiness is what kept the ladies away. Anyway, so over the years, all my friends grew up and sadly I grew out. And by the time the 80s ended, the world around me was completely different. But here it is, 30 years later, and I still hold the music near and dear to my heart. Unfortunately, I also drag around lots of regrets and mistakes, but at least I have the music to console me. Now, I'm not living in the past. The past is living in me. When I wake up in the morning, I am fully aware that it's 2019, but there in the echoes in the hallways of my mind, there's some weird, obscure 80s B-side playing, reminding me that everything's going to be okay. And now the big reveal. I have a brand new radio show entitled Return of the Living 80s. It can be heard on Woody Radio, that's woodyradio.com, on Saturdays from 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. And it's going to be a 2-hour show, and I'm going to be playing hits. I'm going to be playing obscurities. I'm going to be playing rarities, things that are not available on CD, obscure B-sides. But I'm going to be playing a lot of familiar bands, a lot of familiar songs, and I'm going to mix all that stuff together. And it's really going to be an exciting show because I know that we've all had the same types of experiences. Some of us got into music, some of us got out of music, some of us stayed with it, some of us ignored it. But my 2-hour show is meant to maybe bring inspiration or excitement or joy into your lives like it has done for me all these years. Obscurities, hits. It's going to run the full gamut. It's going to be just like a mixtape I would have made in the early to mid 80s. It's basically going to be new wave, power pop, post-punk, things like that. You know, you're not going to hear bands like Hall & Oates or Journey or Foreigner. As much as I love that stuff, no, I'm focusing on 80s new wave type music. I hope that you tune in. I encourage you to tune in and maybe find a little 2-hour window of joy on a Saturday afternoon or evening. And I appreciate you for doing so. I appreciate you for sitting here watching this video. And I'll smell you later.